Hello and welcome to Abnormal Mapping, episode 120. I'm your host, Em, and with me is my regular co-host, Jackson.
Hello.
And we have a guest, Dia!
Hi.
Hey, dear.
I feel like I've been fighting for years to get you on this podcast, and I can't believe it took playing bad games to bring you here, finally.
I can't decide if I'm pissed or like super jazzed that like we're going to talk about absolute shit and not something like worthwhile.
The two things that are defining about this podcast are, first of all, we all play the same game. And second of all, that we generally pick things that are good and not like things that are bad to dunk on them, and we have abandoned both these precepts to get you on.
You could have picked a good game. I would have come for that.
That's not true.
It was too hard to think of one that was perfect, is the thing. So it's easier to pick something imperfect and just assume that because we're friends,
funny.
it would just carry the day. Yeah, it's a little funny. Also, I was genuinely curious. I was like, is there a hidden gem in this, like, lot of RPGs no one talks about? The answer is clearly no. Anyway, before we get into that, Dia, for the three people who don't know who you are, could you briefly introduce yourself?
Yeah, hi, I'm Dia. I write about games sometimes. Mostly I just tweet, like, shit at like assholes on in games Twitter.
Yeah.
But sometimes I write articles for Paste and Waypoint.
You're a photographer. That's how I discovered you. I was like, oh, this person knows something about photography.
That's such a weird, like, it's so weird when I meet people that are like that. And they're just like, no, like, yeah, like, find out your photography first. I'm just like, what? Who are you? But that's groovy. I think I found you through Jackson.
Yes. Well, I found you through Jackson also, but I was like, I scrolled, I was like, okay, game stuff. Oh, cool. Like, I think you had just were plugging that poetry anthology, and we're doing photographs. I was like, you know what? Yeah, this all gels together in my interest set.
I don't remember how I met anyone. Every one of my friends, I just assume I've always known, so I don't remember. Oh, met through me, sure. But I guess I believe you about that. I have no idea what happened. All of my friends, especially if people I meet on Twitter, and this is like a powerful meeting story, they just become part of my life, and I just assume they've been there forever.
It is weird when people have the grand, like, Twitter meeting story, and it's just like, it's Twitter.
I've never remembered how I followed someone. I guess I just did.
I met Destiny through Twitter because a friend was like, you like Woody Allen movies, you should follow Destiny. She also likes Woody Allen movies.
That's funny.
Which was true for both of us at the time. And a decade later, here we are.
Here we are, yep. Times have changed.
Times have changed. Anyway, video games. Has anyone played anything they would like to talk about before we get going?
No, I've been pretty low on the gaming front, other than this terrible RPG I've been playing. So,
yeah, I had to play another bad RPG, which you can read about on Paste.
Yes.
Which also is about like the moon and shit.
What is the name of that game? I don't actually remember.
Astria Ascending.
Okay.
That's why you don't remember, because it's the most generic name.
I'm going to be honest, I can't think of the last RPG that wasn't like part of a franchise where I remember the name easily. Octopath Traveler, I guess, but only because I hate it.
They all have names like this now.
I need Octopath Traveler to be like $5 so that I can just play it and see, because
I was like, oh, it's on Game Pass, but that doesn't help you.
I like their little shadow box approach, but I don't know that it's going to be like worth, like, because they keep selling it for $60 because it's fucking Nintendo.
Mm-hmm.
But
yeah, that's fair. I've been playing Psychonauts 2, which I've been enjoying, but I kind of want to wait till I'm finished to talk about it, so that probably next month. I played Control to the point where I deleted it yesterday, so I'm done with Control. I did not finish Control.
How far did you get in Control?
I got to the part where I was supposed to go finally meet wherever my brother was in the facility, which seemed like it was about like 60% in looking at a walkthrough.
Oh, you hadn't even got to your brother yet? Oh, damn.
No.
Yeah, okay. I got to that and it didn't you think, oh, is this plot going to begin? No, not really.
My thing with that is that I thought it was really striking from the
Yes.
from the start outset. Like, I understand, like, I like SCP and I like online horror, so like the things it's pulling from I was already really familiar with. So a lot of that I'm like, okay, I get it. You're doing this. You're not even like doing anything new with it. You're just doing this, but it's fine. I just really liked walking through like a 1960s FBI office. That's actually the appeal to me. But then they don't do anything with it.
No, it's and
I was-
also like I hated the gameplay. I don't know about you, but like
Yeah,
I was
yeah.
like, why are we doing these big action sequences? I don't want to do this. You haven't made it good. It's not fun to play. Even with
No.
all these fucking powers, I still hate it. Let me
I
just
felt like
just make this a graphic adventure.
I felt like the combat was like really like demanding, and everyone was really bullet spongy in a way that I didn't appreciate. Not having a great time with that, which tries to funnel you into like the
Upgrades,
like random
yeah.
mission upgrade tree stuff where they like randomly cycle missions to get good mods for your guns, and I was like, I don't want to do any of this. This is miserable. But then it's mostly like I like walking through the spaces, and then you go to a space and it's fucked up, and then you purify it, whatever, and you go to another space and it's got a cool color treatment, but it's fucked up, and you purify it. But like, it doesn't change the way in which it's weird. It's weird in the exact same way every time. It just ends up feeling like I'm like, you had one idea. This should have been a 5-hour game. Would have been a really incredible 5-hour game. And so I turned on. I was playing the like director's cut deluxe edition, whatever they call it. So I have the like I don't know if this is in that version or if it was rolled in later, the like accessibility mods or whatever. So I just basically made myself invincible because I didn't want to do the combat, and I made one hit kill the enemies. I was like, I'm just going to go through the game like fast because I was like, this combat sucks. I'm tired of dying because I'm not using all my powers properly or taking cover. I hate taking cover in video games. And it didn't help. It's just still boring. It's just not an interesting game to like even walk through in tourist mode. So I was like, what am I doing here?
Yeah, I know Control is seen by a lot of people as like Remedy's return to form, which I haven't played. Whatever that other one was, Quantum Break.
Quantum Break, yes.
But I think I end up liking Alan Wake more when they're both like weirdly, they're both what's the phrase? Not great. Like,
My thing is Alan Wake, the video game, I also think is a bad game
Right.
to play that I mostly don't like. But American
That's what I
Nightmare is
mean.
really cool.
But that's what I mean. It's like I don't think Remedy have changed that much. Like Max Payne 2 is incredible, but that's because it is 4 hours long.
Yeah.
And they can just they can do the thing they do, which is make levels from the beginning to the end, and then you get your like dose of the pastiche they're doing, and then you get out. Both Alan Wake and Control extend that beyond what that can really support. And I think Control especially has like a really good hook for the plot, and it starts doing like weird, cool stuff, and then you're waiting for like a second idea, and it never comes. It never comes. The plot just never starts up. Even once you find your brother, you're like, oh, this hasn't really changed. This hasn't like opened up the plot yet. This is it. This is all there is. And I walked away very disappointed from it. But I enjoyed the first like 2 hours a lot when I assumed it was going to keep adding new things and not just be that the whole time.
The thing
Yeah,
about the first 2 hours though is they control the camera a lot more.
Yes.
That's true.
And it's really funny because like playing the game, like once they like really open you up, it's just like, oh, I'm not in kind of like, funneled into these very, practically fixed camera, like shots that you're making me play through. And the instant like you've got kind of the free look and you're looking all around, it's just like, yeah, okay, I'm in an office building. What?
Yeah.
Because that's the thing it has, right? It's like striking angles. So I don't know
Mhm.
why. Like, I understand why they made a third-person shooter because that's what Remedy makes, and that like they are good at it. Even though I don't think it's a great third-person shooter, I do think like the act of shooting a gun is fine if hampered by the fact that I have to engage with a really tedious upgrade cycle to make my damage output worth of anything. But I get why they make that choice, even though I think that like for the style they're going with, you're right, like an adventure game with fixed angles, and a game far more about emphasizing like the space around you would be far more effective.
Or just fuck
yeah.
the upgrade tree, Like, honestly, if we just had like 3 shots, no upgrade tree. Like,
Max Payne 2.
I mean, I already think
Still
it has
good.
too many guns. Like it has a good pistol, and there's some other guns you can fuck with, but like you didn't need it. 5-hour version, you get one gun and some powers. Great game.
I need to go back to guns where you just have the gun. You have a pistol, and it's the pistol, and we balanced it. We balanced the pistol to do this. Maybe you have pistol and revolver. That's it. They're very different weapons.
but how will they sell you DLC pistols that way?
I don't want to. do loot to get +5 anything in my life.
I have to say though that going down this road, I'm not going to play Quantum Break. That seems super boring. But playing otherwise all the Remedy games, I'm kind of interested to see what that Crossfire X story mode ends up being. Because that's them operating in a thing they don't own, in like an engine they didn't make. Like they're doing the story for a already successful shooter, and it's got to be like a military Metal Gear. And so I'm like, I bet they could do something interesting with that. They might not. And I'm not going to like pay like money for it. It's got to be like on Game Pass or some shit. But I'm curious.
I assume that will be on Game Pass.
Yeah, it seems like
was that all the Xbox. I think it's probably being published by Xbox. So
oh, there you go. Yeah.
That
I'm always
would be
rooting
weird.
for them to do something interesting, and they just keep not doing it. So
yeah, I mean, I understand what like Control, puts everything up front, and then it's like, oh, they only had so much budget, they just do the same thing over and over again. Like making a new thing for a video game to do, as we will find out in the next segment, is hard and costs a lot of
it's
money.
also not very spooky. I was
No.
expecting
No,
something way spookier. Like the first half hour is all right, but then like the first time you go to the motel.
Yes.
Yeah, you're like, oh, this is going to be like this is like going for something, and like they're going to be jump scares, and nothing happens, and then you go to the hotel, like every other time, it's just another like really easy puzzle with like the same mechanic of ringing the bell to open the door. It's like, what are we doing here?
I was waiting for it to become Twin Peaks. And
Yeah.
like I was just like, okay, come on. Like season 2 Twin Peaks, let's just go balls to the wall with that shit. And no, after like, I watched like the first little like hand puppet show, and I'm just like, okay, you've got a spooky like Syphil and Ollie, and now I'm in this like weird 1970s roadside motel.
Mm.
Yeah, are we gonna do it? No. Okay.
The spooky puppet, like hand puppet show, evokes so strongly like kind of like internet horror video, but doesn't even go for that. Like really, it's not fucked up enough. It's not a story that like coheres into something interesting in the way those do.
Well, it's something that like, honestly, it's like something that like, a Gen X person or a boomer will look at and go like, man, that's fucked up. The internet's fucked up. Internet's weird, man. And it's just like, what? What's wrong with you guys?
I remember
this isn't a meme that lasts even a week. Like, come on.
Right. Yeah. I remember the first time I went to the motel bit, which is like, the lights go out and then you pull the thing and then you end up, it's like genuinely really scary, but
Yeah.
not because it does anything. You just think it will. Like you go
Yes.
into the hotel and I'm going in all the rooms and I'm like, something's going to happen. I'm getting really scared because I don't like scary games. So I'm like, I didn't really sign up for this. The fuck's going on? And then there's no release. You just leave the fucking motel.
Well, it's because there's nothing scary. There's
No.
atmosphere and enemy drops. That's what the game has.
But they make this whole bespoke area for this really cool moment, and you pull the thing and you end up there, and then you're just there, and then you just leave. Like there's no release for the weird tension. It doesn't really end up meaning anything in the metaphor other than like it gives a clue to the place that they went, and you go to that motel like 5 times. Like when that happens, you think, oh, this will happen, and then there'll be something else that's like a really cool world, and then just they just don't do more of that stuff because most of the resources are put towards like making big areas to do repeat combat encounters in.
No, and it doesn't
Yeah.
even do that well. And this is just how it is. Like, kind of Junji Ito sort of thing. It's just kind of nothing.
Yeah. So I deleted it. I'm done. I'm fine. I feel bad about that one because I paid money for it, but it's better than to not push through. Trying to break myself of being like, I have to finish the games I buy. Ridiculous. I don't have to do anything.
I mean, you got the good parts of it. Like,
Yeah. The other game I played this month was Toho Luna Nights, which is a Metroidvania style Toho game, which is
Yeah.
a long running series. They're mostly shooters, right? They're like everything now. I feel like there's a Toho version of like every game at this point, but mostly shooters with like a bunch of lore. I don't know. I'm not a Toho person. Don't ask me. I'm sorry. But it is like a more heavily combat focused Metroidvania, I feel like. And it adopts a lot of shooter mechanics and like sensibilities, in that like you're in this like, Castlevania castle area. There's 5 bosses in the game. And the mechanic mostly is like all of your attacks take MP, and to regain health and MP, you have to get close enough to an enemy to get like a graze state where your like hitboxes overlap. Like not the the character models, not the hitboxes overlap. Like in a shooter when you like brush against an enemy, and it will give you restoration. So you're always trying to get real close to enemies and then back up and hit them. And it's really interesting to see that happen with all the like signifiers of a shooter. Like then gems come out of the enemies and like swarm around your character, and like a little mechanical voice goes graze. Like it's the what's that Space Invaders Infinity Gene kind of voice, if you've played that, which is really cool, like modern shooter. And then the boss, like, it's just like, go to the castle, do the stuff. And then the bosses are just real motherfuckers. It's like, this boss has 5 attacks and it's going to cycle in a pattern, and you just got to learn it. And that's the thing. And it's fun. I had a pretty good time. I ended up like kind of hitting a wall with the 4th boss, and I was like, do I want to finish this? And, coming on deadline, I want to get some other stuff done. Psychonauts is coming out. And so I was like, nah, but I had a good time. Like, that's one of those where I abandoned, but I feel really good about it. I'm like, that was a really cool game. It's on Game Pass. It cost me nothing.
Touhou Luna Nights is really good, and that's why I was so bummed out by Deedlit in Wonder Labyrinth.
Oh, really?
Because that's
that not as good?
It's Teen Ladybug. Yeah. So
Okay.
that is like their follow-up to Touhou Luna Nights, and it's much more of just a like kind of bog standard Metroidvania, but like I guess more kind of like level design based. But like, yeah, it's just very like that was very generic, and I was just like, but Touhou Luna Nights was so good. What happened here?
Yeah, and like a shooter, that game, if you don't hit a wall with the bosses, that game seems like it's going to be about like 3 or 4 hours long.
Yeah.
It's like really straightforward and compact. It's really cool. I was really impressed with it. So, if anyone has other Touhou games that they think are worth checking out, without assuming I'm never going to care about the lore and don't want to learn, please let me know. I have to know about enough anime lore for my other job. Thanks.
It's true. I guess I did play some games this month.
Would you play?
Which is not nothing like worth spending too much time on. But I got a new iPad, which meant I tried Apple Arcade stuff out, where they've put out all the games that were like old iOS games, but now they don't have microtransactions in them.
Yeah, when I spent some time with Apple Arcade, I had a really good time. There's like cool stuff in there.
But now you're just like, oh, right, Jetpack Joyride, the classic. It's still good. It's the same fucking video game.
Oh, I didn't know they had that in there. I was playing like small puzzle games that I like, kind of like, what's the name of that? I don't even remember the name of those games. There's just good stuff in there, I think.
Yeah, no, there's like a version of Cut the Rope. It's like a version of Angry Birds. It's weird. It's like traveling back in time 10 years, but now they've taken all the like money out. They're like normal games.
Oh, yeah, that's not what I was spending my time on when I played that.
No, I want to try more of the actual like puzzle games. I wasn't like spending that long. Really, what I've been doing is playing like the crosswords and Sudoku games and that. Like, I've been playing the good Sudoku thing and trying to do that every day on top of the crosswords we're all doing. Just getting into puzzle shit.
Oh, there you go.
Doing my best.
Where's the next Room game?
Where the fuck is the next Room game? How long has it been since Old Sins?
A long time. I know they made that VR game, but nobody gives
Doesn't
a shit
count.
about VR.
Does not count. Make a game
I
for real
played a
people.
little VR at a friend's house in the last month. I used an Index briefly, played a couple games, played Thumper. Thumper's really bad in VR, by the way. So,
I bet it is. That sounds really weird.
I played a little bit of Alex and tossed a gun back and forth and put on a hat, and that was neat. It's not worth the money it costs. It's crazy. Also, didn't really work with me not wearing my glasses. It was very blurry.
Yes. I mean, yeah, a lot of people wear glasses. It's hard to make VR work with glasses. Like, obviously, all games are inaccessible by some degree. They are exclusionary, both on monetary and physical reasons. This is just a thing with the medium. VR takes us to like an extreme in all directions.
Yeah. Yeah. I was impressed more than I was expecting, but also like extremely not convinced this is a thing anyone needs. So,
I mean,
mention it.
No one wants it. Is the thing. Like, people, you can enjoy it, right? You go into a VR thing and enjoy doing it, but generally speaking, when you want to game, you want to just sit down and play a fucking video game and not, get suited up. It's just so much.
Yeah, the thing I would use it for is VR stuff. Like rhythm game like stuff. My friend had me play Synth Riders. That game is fucking cool. That's the one.
Mm-hmm.
Because that's kind of like Beat Saber, more about like moving, like not hitting targets, but like following paths that are being projected out at you. So it feels a little dancier. It was fun. I had a good time with that.
The funny thing is the game I want to play in VR is the Veil game that I just reviewed.
Really?
Like, I think that with like the, like the little Valve controllers, because like the thing is I ended up just like, just putting a headband over my eyes for the entire thing and just kind of just operating on like my ears. But like, by the end of it, I was like, I was turning my head to the sounds to try and hear them better, and I was like, oh wait, it doesn't work. But
Yeah.
like, give me
Yeah.
positional audio that with head tracking, and like, you know,
Yeah.
let me like, you know, bring my hands into it. Now we've got something
Mhm.
really interesting.
Yeah, the controllers and the way the like speakers are integrated in the headset were kind of like the most impressive parts to me
Right?
for the index. Because I put on those controls. I'm like, oh, you just do everything. This is like really like nuanced and cool. Maybe there's something to these motion control things that everyone abandoned, unfortunately.
I like the Wii.
Yeah. Too bad the Wii games happened.
Yeah. Still my favorite play to
All
play
right.
Resident Evil 4.
No, I can't go there with
Oh,
you.
see, that made me very happy to play it that way.
I've only played it on the GameCube and on the Wii, and I thought they were like, I was happy to play the Ada stuff, and I didn't think it was like worse. I thought it was fine.
I mean, I like the Wii. It's a good version of the Resident Evil 4, but I don't know. I can't say it's like the best one.
It made aiming a lot easier.
But then I don't like the control difference in the new version where they want you to go left trigger, right trigger. That sucks.
Ugh.
Like in they don't you can't move, but the main way that like it is mapped in the modern games, is to when you plant your feet to aim, you're moving the aim stick with the right stick now. Like you move with the left stick and aim with the right stick, even though you can only do them like you can't do them at the same time, but you do them with different sticks. Which is frustrating because there is a way to change it back, but on PS1 it changes it back by also changing the aim button from the right trigger to the R1 button, which feels worse. So there you go. Got some critiques for the Resident Evil 4 ports, aiming schemes and button mapping. Hard criticism on dual mapping. Calling out Capcom for this. We can talk about these terrible video games now if you want.
Our game club this month, breaking from our format for the past almost 8 years, is the Tokyo RPG Factory Co. Limited's trilogy of RPGs. We each took one of them. This is a company founded in 2014, a subsidiary of Square Enix, to churn out 16-bit RPG throwbacks. Basically, they were like, what if we made Chrono Trigger but gave it no budget? And they just kept doing that. I played I Am Setsuna, Dio played Lost Sphere, Jackson played Oninaki. we're going to go through them. We're going to introduce the game and talk about the plot and kind of some of the mechanics each, and then we'll just have a conversation. So we're just going to have to get all the homework out of the way here.
Yeah.
It'll make it easier.
If
So-
an episode ends up being a mess, then that's why we don't normally all play different games.
Yes. I Am Setsuna is a 2016 game that came out originally on PS4, Vita, and Windows in Japan. This is a game about a snowy land beset by demons, and once a generation, a young girl takes it upon herself to be the sacrifice to go to the lost land, or the last land, sorry, not the lost lands, the last lands, and sacrifice herself to quell the demons for another generation. Your character is named Endir, and he is just a guy in like a knight armor, and he's very taciturn, and you never know really anything about him throughout the entire game. There's no reveal about who he is, doesn't matter. And he's tasked with executing the next sacrifice, and he goes to the village, and the sacrifice is a girl named Setsuna, and she convinces him that she's off to die anyway, so he should just, escort her, and that will be the conclusion of his mission, because she'll be dead anyway. And you're like, I guess that makes sense to me. I signed up for this. And you become one of her guardians, taking her to the last lands. You get a ragtag group of characters. There's like a little kid who's like got a bunch of magic. There's an Arin type swordsman who turns out to be your illegitimate father, who he was the guardian of the last sacrifice, who was her mom, but she died on the way of a broken heart when he was like, you're the sacrifice, I can't love you. And she's like, well, then I pass away. And maybe the stupidest scene I've ever seen in an RPG. There's a cool like a dragoon knight lady who turns out to be the last of the royal bloodline of the Lost Kingdom, which is where the last lands are. And she's like, I want to go there and reclaim the power of the throne, and we could stop this with my king energy. And you help her out with that. You get to the last lands, and there you find a woman called the Time Judge. And she looks exactly like one of your party members, like one of the original Guardians of Setsuna, who's named Eterna. And it turns out that she has been waiting for someone to come every time and offer up her life energy to allow her to continue to seal up something called Dark Samsara. And I'm like, isn't Samsara already like pretty bleak? It's like suffering. This is like,
Yeah, but this is the Dark Samsara.
Yeah. When her mother came back in the day before she died, she talked to the Time Judge, and she was like, I think my daughter is like different. I think she's gonna come and she's gonna be able to break this cycle of sorrow, and I want you to help her out. She's like, okay, if I believe that she can do this, we'll do it. And so when that happened, the party came and talked to the Time Judge, and the Time Judge has been in this loop of trying to get Setsuna to finish the fight forever. Every time she comes up, she's like, no, I'm going to sacrifice myself, actually. And then the Time Judge is like, well, your mom said you'd be different. So she resets time to when Setsuna sets out on her journey and just keeps recycling the times. This time, however, when you show up, she's like, this Endir guy, he wasn't here last time. I don't know what his deal is. And Eterna, who looks like the Time Judge, has been like the avatar who's been sent with you to make sure things are going differently, trying to push things in the right direction each time. And she's convinced that now that your character's there, maybe things will be different. Setsuna has more fire. She's been hardened in the like Dragon Age version of like talking about how characters develop. And so you go. And so she gives up her powers to like break the time cycle. She's like, okay, well, this time I'm not going to recycle time. I'm going to give you the last of my powers, and you have to do it because I'm not going to be around to reset anything. And so you go and you meet with Dark Samsara and you defeat it, but it doesn't seem to do anything. And it turns out that when you defeated Dark Samsara, it retreated back through your memories into the past. And you're like, well, what do? We don't have the time lady. We can't go back into the past. And Setsuna's like, actually, we do have a link to the chain of memories to the past. And you're like, what are you talking about? And it turns out that only Endir and Setsuna have been able to see the save points in the game. And the save points are footsteps of your path back into the past. And you use the power of the save points to travel back to the day where Setsuna's mom was going on a journey, where Dark Samsara is in its human form, and your character defeats it, and then Setsuna takes it within herself, like to show it what like compassion and love is, and then she's like, Endir, do your job, and you kill her, and that's it. Cycle broken. Everyone happy, except Endir, who wanders the earth with like the spirit of Setsuna watching over him. The end.
Wow.
The game is Chrono Trigger. That's it. That's the video game. It's all snowy and it's Chrono Trigger. There's 3 characters to a party. There's an active time battle system. Everyone gets techs. There's dual techs that combine various techs into the special moves. It's all about exploiting elemental damage. Enemy drops are based on kills using the elemental damage, which allows you to buy new techs from the shop. You don't get them through level up, but it's like the most rote battle system possible. I have like nothing to say about the battle system. It's just boring Chrono Trigger. It's fine. It's totally fine. I didn't hate it. It goes on too long. My final time was like 16 hours, which seems short for an RPG, but it was an exhausting 16 hours because nothing happens.
Damn.
That's my game.
There's some similarities there between that game and my game.
and mine. Wow.
Wow. I know these all have the same scenario writer. I feel like I would want to stretch a little bit.
Oh, do
if
they
I
have
was
the
writing
same
3
scenario
games in a
writer?
row.
Because that
Yes, they do.
explains so much.
Same director, same scenario writer.
All right. So am I up now?
You're
Yes,
up now.
you're up
Lost
now.
Sphere.
Lost Sphere is it was released in 2017 for Switch, PlayStation 4, and Microsoft Windows. It's Chrono Trigger. The premise of this one is that the world was created by the moon, and a long time ago there were these plated people who walked around in mechs, and everything was okay until, oh no, they had conflict, and then they started the world started disappearing around them. Flash forward years later, you're this little kid named, you're not like a kid, you're like a teen named Kanata, and you're best friends with this girl named Lumina. You go out exploring, come back home. Oh shit, your home's not there anymore. It's like a white void where your home should have been. And turns out that Kanata has the ability to take memories and turn them back into these lost spaces and then kind of rematerialize them. Turns out the whole world is having this phenomenon where things just go missing, and they call it the Lost. Which is where the Lost Sphere comes from. And you end up walking your ass all the way over to the Imperial, throne, the giant city. Step back. And here, your hometown is called Elgarth, as in, Los Chicos de Wayne's World. And
God.
you, the empire which you are going to go visit is the Gigante Empire. So you go to the Gigante Empire and you join the Empire. They're like, wow, this kid's got this ability. Let's take him with us to go see this, this ruin of where the plated people who had mechs once lived. Because the Empire wants fucking mechs. They're called Vulko suits because I guess you can trademark Vulko suit. And then you shit happens there. Your friend gets injured. They take him back. The Empire's like, hey, we need your help to go do some other things. And you're like, we're good citizens of the Empire. Let's go do that. You go there. Turns out that there's a native people, and they're on a mountain that is full of a natural resource that the Empire wants to create bombs, basically. And they kill everyone there that they take prisoners. And you're like, wow, I wish these people hadn't fought back. We wouldn't have had to injure them or take them prisoner. Maybe the Empire's not so great. This keeps going on. Eventually you realize, oh, the Empire's actually shit. It takes way too long. But then you go to the other side of the world because now you're wanted by the Empire because they, you betrayed them by telling them that they're assholes. You meet a bunch of random people that join your crew, like a giant sentient monster who was born from prayers, named Dianto, the Demon King. Which
they just put a golem in the game. That's cool. Actually,
he's like this big, kind of softy.
Oh really?
Yeah, he's got a big hammer, and he's like this big blue demon guy, and he's like, I want to help them. I'm Dianto, the Demon King. No one is voiced except for in battle combat, and they're all voiced in Japanese.
Yeah, that's mine too.
Yeah. You also pick up a member of the tribe that you obliterated or helped obliterate, who is the War Maiden, and she's real pissed off about everything in the Empire, and she's constantly the Empire sucks, right? And you're like, no, the Empire is great. It's just a misunderstanding. She's like, no, they suck. I'm going to kill all of them once you let me do it. But in the end, you go to another continent. You
Oh
been,
God.
This game is so fucking long. In the other continent, you basically realize that the Empire is shit. There is a commander who was the one who brought you into the Empire, and she reveals herself to be a woman, and everyone's like, "You're a woman?" She's like, "I've always been a woman. What are you talking about?" And it's like, you could take screenshots of it and be like, "Oh my God, trans representation." And no, it's not. But people would do that. Don't do it. But she's like, this blonde woman, and everyone's like, "Wow, we thought you were a man." And she's like, "No, and I thought the Empire was good, but maybe I was wrong." And then you all kind of like get visited by this weird like manifestation, and you realize like, oh, there's some shit going on that's beyond the Empire. It's not just the Empire. The Empire is being controlled by a weird metaphysical creature called Crom, who's not actually a metaphysical creature. He's just like a dude. Bunch of shit happens. You go to like help one of your friend who was injured. He comes back. It turns out he's actually like been turned into a robot. You don't realize it at first, but even though it's really obvious to the player that, oh, this was my buddy, now he's a robot fighting for the Empire. Eventually he joins your side. One of your other companions like feels like you let him down, so he betrays you to Crom, who is his former ally. Crom is actually, he stole the moon's power. He was a researcher, and ultimately he's the big bad guy.
Did you just beat him?
You go to the moon.
No time loop? Okay,
You go to the moon because the moon is in charge of everything. And it turns out that the moon has created the world, and it keeps destroying the world every time there's conflict. And it destroys the world by by just sucking these like pockets out away from it. And so that's what happened with the king of the plated people. They had a conflict. So the moon just like just obliterated the world. And now the world is conflicted once again. So the moon is obliterating it with Crom. The reason Crom stole the power is because he was like, I don't want the moon to be influencing the world, even though he basically became the moon. And now he's trying to remake it himself. You go to the moon, you steal one of the Empire's like, sick mech planes, and you go to the moon, and then you kill Crom. The end. Not quite. Then there's a whole thing about like after credit, the post game where you do some like little adventures. You kill another Crom. You kill some other bosses that are reminiscent of bosses from the earlier game. And then, you come down to and it's like Lumina turns out to have part of her is part of the moon. And Kanata and Lumina both come from the moon. And so the only way to heal the moon is to send Lumina back. If you send Lumina back, or Lumina's like, I'm going to go back to the moon. That's the only way to stop this from happening again. I can heal the moon. And you have the option of being like, no, don't go, and using your power to make her stay, which means Lumina's alive, and on Earth, or the planet, and like with Kanata and the crew. But also, the loss process is still happening, and maybe you can outpace it by Kanata just wandering the Earth and like rememorizing these places, but probably not. Who knows? Or you could let Lumina go into the moon and fix the moon, and then the process of loss stops happening, and maybe the world's okay. But now Lumina's in the moon. No Lumina for Kanata.
I think that's clearly the right answer.
Yeah,
here.
like I was just kind of like, sorry, babe, you gotta go.
You gotta go in the moon.
She wants to go on the moon,
like,
though, right?
Yeah, like you get to go to the moon, and like she's gonna like kind of look down on you, and like, the moon's like this giant techno magical system. Like she'll figure something out. But yeah, and then the game ends with everyone staring up at the moon as credits roll.
Incredible.
It's fucking exhausting.
How's the gameplay?
The gameplay is identical to yours. The big difference is you get memories from enemy battles, and you can trade those in to get various skills. And then also there's a system called Sprite Night, which like
that's what my techs were called. Sprite Night. I equipped
Wait,
Sprite Night.
It's Sprite Night in your game too? Jesus
Yes.
Christ. Because Sprite Knight is a whole thing. It's like it comes from the moon in this game, and like, you know,
Oh, they were just like magical crystals in my game. It was not mentioned.
yeah,
because
because like Lumina, she is the Sprite Knight core is inside of her, like, and and there's like Sprite Knight towers that control the elements and like, but yeah, the only other difference is you kind of go around the world and like as you play you collect memories and then you can use them to like unlost aspects of the map. And sometimes you have to do it. Sometimes it's just for funsies, and you can put like monuments. You can like unlost monuments that like give you passive buffs in combat. Meh.
Before we get to Jackson's, I forgot a key part of my plot that you reminded me by saying Sprite Knight. Dark Samsara's whole thing is how it like arose is back in the day, the last kingdom that fell or whatever, had its magic powers waning, and so it used the Sprite Knight as like magical technology, and like there was one last child born with intense magical power, and they experimented on him with the Sprite Knight, and he learned to hate humanity, and he became Dark Samsara. That's the whole thing. That's why the kingdom fell. Every RPG is the same.
Okay, so let's before I do, man, instead of doing another 15 minutes of explaining a plot, let's do a bullet point list. Let's take what is in these two games. What do we consider the precepts of a Tokyo RPG Factory game? And I'll tell you if it's in. Okay, so cycle of time loop bullshit. The world, the like badness is representative of the hatred of the humanity or whatever. And can we ever escape our sins? There's a girl. And she's nebulously connected to the evil.
But definitely willing to sacrifice herself.
Definitely willing to sacrifice herself. All of these things are true-ish in this game. So, Oninaki is a game about Kagachi, who is a watcher, which is a kind of like supernatural cop. He protects the cycle of reincarnation, which means kills guys. The way reincarnation works, as is believed, is we know ghosts exist. Ghosts exist, we can see them. Some people can cross over to the world of the beyond and find the ghosts. But the ghosts only exist if they have like lingering memories of this world, and lingering like regrets or wills or whatever. And so you have to go find the ghosts and fucking deal with them so that they can pass on. Once they pass on, everyone is like, and then they get reincarnated, but no one actually can prove that. Once the ghosts disappear from because everyone, when people are born, they don't have old memories, so no one really, the reincarnation thing is nebulous at this point. The first half of the game is about hanging out with this spirit called Lynn, who is this like a non-aging child who's been around forever but refuses to pass on because she wants to save the Night Devil, who is another powerful spirit who wants revenge on the realm, because I don't mean to shock you here, but his soul is full of hatred, and we need to find out why he has such hatred and save his soul so we can protect the realm. Eventually, in the first half of the game, as a bunch of bullshit happens, we realize that the Night Devil is me, Lene is his sister, and when the Night Devil died, his hatred lived on, but his soul was split in two, and so you're like the other parts of him, and so you go, well, the only way to solve this is to take the Night Demon into me, to absorb him again and sacrifice myself. And you do this, and you think, well, is that the end of the game? And then you're like, no, this is halfway through the game. You wake up in the Night Demon's body 30 years ago in the time loop. And then you discover that Lene is Sarah in history. She's Sarah, Yora, Soju is their real names. They are the next the next sovereign of the realm, and the realm is going to kill you and sacrifice Soju so that Sarah can be like more divinely protected, and that's just like part of the evil of the realm, and that's what the birth of Soju's hatred is, and he dedicates himself to killing those who hurt others, so he becomes basically evil Batman, and that is the Night Devil. He wants justice so much that he just starts murdering everyone. And then you realize that actually that's not even quite true, because Sarah has okay. You go through this time loop. You figure out parts of his past. The other ongoing plot is that in 20 years in the past, another queen rises up and executes Sarah and takes her place, and the royal bloodline is broken, and in the present timeline can't do any of the like secret occult shit that you need the royal blood for, that she didn't know existed before she did this coup. So you have to kind of stop that happening so you can then go into the secret occult shit that is like in the back of the palace and find out the secret of reincarnation. You do that, you realize the secret of reincarnation is not that everyone's souls get reborn, but while that happens, everyone's souls are... When you die, your souls are purified, and the despair lives on, and the despair collects and forms the Oni, and eventually every human is killed by the Oni when enough despair is built, and then that civilization is destroyed, and then the next cycle begins, and then everyone's reincarnated, then there's a new Oni, and it goes on forever. And you are part of the your sister's the only priest who's been doing this, but she has like deliberately sent her spirit into the future to talk to you to see if you could get a different perspective on humanity and whether this is the right cycle or whether we can find another way. And at the end of the game, you can choose whether to break the cycle of reincarnation and fight the Oni, or whether to become one with the Oni and accept that this is the way of things. You're obviously meant to fight the Oni. You do, you win, and then your choices are either to kill yourself because, you know, if you're alive, the Oni can come back, or to live on and watch over humanity. And the game plays living on as like the better choice, but I think killing yourself is the right choice in this situation.
I didn't even get a choice. I feel like I got the short end of the stick here. We'll talk about it in a second.
This game had slightly longer development time, so there's non-stop voice acting, but not the lines, just like 4 Japanese syllables that everyone already knows if you've, you know, watched any anime ever. They got a bunch of actors in to do like give you like 4 reads, and then you hear those reads over and over and over again. Linny's like Dajobu every time you fucking do anything. You were on Skype to me for about an hour of this game. She said it about 50 times.
That's what Lumina does. Yeah.
Yeah, great, perfect.
What if they're the same voice actors for all of our characters?
I don't know about that.
Yeah, my characters had like end of battle barks and like maybe some yah-yahs during like big attacks, but otherwise it is unvoiced.
My main character yells out the names of the like spirits, which are like your job classes that he uses whenever he switches to them. And obviously I was using Dia and I was using Trays. So he was screaming out Dia and Trays all the time. Because those are my guys. I got White Dia and White Trays.
White Dia.
White Dia uses guns? So the actual thing is that this game's an action game. This game is an action RPG, and it feels bad to play. The combat is your moves are very set. You have a set combo and you have special moves. The special moves can eventually get satisfying, but they are never incorporated into the combos. And the recovery time on the animations is so high that like the way you do dodges is really annoying. It doesn't feel good as an action game because it doesn't like cohere into a broader system. You just like plant your feet and do a move. And when you do your combo, you just have the one combo for the whole game. The only thing that changes is you get more special moves, which you're doing instead of combos. But you don't chain into those. There's no like action game flow, right? Like in an action game, you do a combo and you do a move and it puts an enemy into a different state, and then you can do a different move to them. And that is just the way action games flow. There is like a connection from one move to the other, and there's none of that here. It is very disconnected. I think it's a really, really bad action game, and the part where it's like a grindy Diablo action game is like a little better because Square Enix can design RPG systems, but it takes so long, and I wasn't invested in it because you only got like 15 enemy types. So yeah, that was my disappointment with the game. I think it's really bad.
So we're talking about choices a bit. Do either of your games have the thing where your characters are constantly asking you to like opine between 2 like relatively different choices, but they never matter? Because mine had that all the time.
No.
Okay. Because mine was always like, oh, what do we think we should do? It's like, should we help this person? Like, oh, who cares? Leave them. In like a way where like, I felt like it was feeding into something, but I checked and no, it neither does anything. It doesn't matter. There's no like, they're silently tallying it up on who you're going to date at the Golden Saucer to it. There's nothing. It's just constantly asking for my input on whether I should be a bad person or a good person.
See, it's really funny because like mine kept having those moments, but it never asked the question. It just like went ahead and just did the thing. And it was always like, there's one point you have to rescue, like there's these Imperial soldiers who keep following you and fighting you, and you do this kind of trio of boss fights, and eventually they get poisoned, and you have to take them back to the town to cure them, and like the tribal war chief girl, she's like, maybe let's not, maybe fuck these guys, and then everyone's like, what should we do, Kanata? And Kanata's like, we're going to bring them back and help them. And then everyone's like, ha ha ha, of course that'd be the choice you'd make. We knew that all along. And just repeat that like every time there's a moral decision. And
Mm-hmm.
The one thing I forgot about is like the game is constantly questioning like, wait, but the Empire, we believed in the Empire. They can't be all bad. And then like it turns out like, oh, there's like being corrupted by this, Crom. Fuck, his name's Crom.
Mm-hmm.
And in the end, like the woman commander, she's like, I think I could go back to the Empire. They might not take a deserter, but I really want to help them create the vision that Emperor Neo Diaz
Sounds good to me. Doesn't sound
right?
evil at all.
Believes in. And it's just like, really? We got through all of this at the end? You still think Imperial power is good? Or at least, like, redeemable? Okay.
Yeah, my game had some of that as well. And that, like, okay, so the realm is controlled by this royal family who's, like, evil, and they're also, like, I guess, the Onis in some way. That bit came really late, though, so they don't really talk about that much. But in the first part of the time loop, in the main setting of the game, before it flashes back and realizes that was just like one possible timeline that she sent herself into the future in a dream. When you first start playing the game, you think it's about this idea that like no one knows what happens with reincarnation, and because of political change, all of the like secret blood magic that worked it out is gone. Because I don't like when like, oh, the royal family must be restored because they have the power of the blood to like talk to the gods. But I do like when the story is we killed them, whoops, and now we have to like work out how to do things ourselves. And so it like gestures towards that in a way that's kind of interesting. But then instead of like going forward with that, it actually is set up to travel back in time and fix it, because I guess consequences don't matter. There's no point to anything. We can just do a time loop and make it better now, I guess. Which is I like. There are time loop stories I like, but I don't like when they actively make the game less interesting as you solve all the problems that were the only things the game had going for it. Because eventually you just get to a situation where the final boss is like, oh, human despair is inevitable and therefore we shouldn't live. And then you go, no, I believe in holding on to humanity. And I'm like, yes, I've played every JRPG. Right, I haven't played every JRPG. Every JRPG I've played does this. They'll do this, do something else. Please, dear God. And the actual thing is that, obviously, this is the plot of all of them, but these games, or at least my one, doesn't have, like, character to it. I don't have situations where it's like, oh yeah, my party members are having a good time interacting, and I like this because even though the plot's generic, there's stuff to hang on to with the people involved and the sub stories, but they felt very generic. As it was doing, it's like, oh, tragedy stories, because everything involves with people dying because it's such a death game, and it really wants to be dark some points, but it doesn't really hit.
So you showed me the picture of White Dia in game, and like I was like hell yeah, sure. What did that translate to in the game for you? Was it like, because mine had like really nice character like portraits in the character status menus, but then when you entered the game, they looked kind of like leftover assets from Einhander. Like it was just like, what are these PS1 collections of polygons that are like supposed to be people?
Yeah, I mean, everyone kind of looks like if the Bravely Default guys grew feet. Is what I would describe the like in-game models as. It is like reduced, not quite chibi, but like reduced in like abstract art style, but not in a way that I think is beneficial. Because everyone just has very like rigid animation set that they reuse a lot. The scenes are very rigid, and it doesn't. I understand that like. I've played Final Fantasy VII. I love that game. I played it recently. That game is also like fixed angles and like set animations, but it just has so much more personality. This feels like it's taking the stock animations and applying them to everyone. Whenever like a guy's sad and has to run away, they do a very robotic run off screen, and it just like I don't know. You really feel the lack of polish.
That's true of mine too, but I feel like there's partially like mine's an old game now, right? Like it came out a while ago, in a way that like makes it feel, and like, you know, for like the last generation, it was on the Vita. And it ends up feeling, and it's so like, it never breaks the camera, the top-down camera. There's no like cut scenes of camera moves. There's no CG, anything. It felt very much like we are going to try to do our best to make the SNES game with modern technology. And I don't know if that's like a thing that's like good to try for, honestly, but at least it clearly was a manufacturing of the constraints and the budget it was given. It definitely doesn't seem like a game that had a lot of money or like time put into it. In kind of the same ways that originally Bravely Default felt like, oh, like they're just, you know, they don't have a lot to work with. They're doing a DS thing. It's kind of experimental, but like that game had like a more personality and more weirdness about it. Like, because these are deliberately meant to be throwbacks, I just felt like this like crushing gravity of trying to live up to what people wanted out of RPGs, which is like, you got to go in there and you got to hit the emotional beats and you got to make it really desperate. And you need to like include this one battle system that everyone keeps asking for, even though we don't know how to make it like interesting or good.
It wasn't that good in Chrono Trigger.
Playing this really made me appreciate that Chrono Trigger is like a breezy game with like really distinct personalities. Like my party all have like points of view and they like come to like loggerheads about decisions, and like they're like, oh, should we help these people? Like, no, we need to keep going. It's the end of the world. We don't have time to like help this one village that's useless. And like, in a game with like better writing, that would be the point, but like nobody's fun. There's no
Yes.
frog where I'm like, man, I just like that this guy talks funny and has a cool sword. There's nothing like that. There's no like, you know, Robo and Luca like relationship kind of stuff where like these characters bond and become friends just like outside of even the party structure. There's nothing like that.
Yeah,
here.
none of my characters had
That's
personality,
definitely-
and they didn't even really have visual personality. Like it was, you could kind of tell there's one character, Vaughn, who is like, he's just a jerk the whole time, and he's like a prince, and he's pissed off because like his whole kingdom like, you know, disappeared. Which, okay, fair reason to be pissed off, but he's just like a jerk the whole time. And it's not like, you know, it's not even like Magus being like broody little emo boy. Like he's just like obnoxious. And like once he's like, why don't we just kill them and move on? And like everyone's like, no, we're not doing that. Stop being an asshole. Like that's it. Like, and he's just like, you know, your average like white-haired anime nerd boy magic user. Like,
That guy's the protagonist in my game.
Like,
it's weird, right? Because like the game has characters, right? It has characters when they have defined point of views, and they do like technically interact with the plot and have differences. You know, they have the things that the good writing should have on some level, but I don't like them. I don't enjoy spending time with them in a way like you mentioned Bravely Default, and Bravely Default has that as well. But it also has, you know, Ring a Bell and Nadia beating each other up in like anime goofy shit, which is also tropey anime goofy stuff, but it is like, you know, slice of life goofy stuff. It is human moments that I feel like are kind of left out of this game. And I've been racking my head trying to think like, what is it actually missing? Because there are things I think that are fine here and think that are like competent enough. But it is missing any kind of connection to the characters. And I don't know like what my advice would be for how to get it back. Like, is it actually the bad writing, or is it the animation is like delivered in such a way and the text boxes are so slow that it, like the writing can't connect? Would the same script work better if it was sprites animating like fast and snappily with a better like artistic design of an actual SNES game? I don't know the answers to these questions, but I was definitely like asking them as I was finishing.
The thing for me playing this was it felt like you get the scenario writer to write like the broad story of the game. And then normally you take that and then like that's where the process begins and there's a collaborative effort to like build out the world. But it seems like they took the scenario and like just made the game off of the scenario with like very little elaboration and like time spent on the beat to beat stuff for at least for my game where like I'm like, this needed like a pass with a writer that cared about the characters that never got addressed. Everything just feels very like perfunctory in a way to drive forward the plot. In a way where like, I almost was like, okay, in a normal RPG, you have like, let's use Final Fantasy 7. You have your Midgar and it's like propulsive. There's like a goal and then it opens up and it gets a little weird. And you're like, you know, everyone dresses up as sailors to get on the boat. And then you're hanging out on like a resort and you're like, there's like elaborations and weird stuff happening. This game, I was like, I was going through it and I was like, okay, I get a grasp of the mechanics. Like there's interesting stuff here. I like the party interaction. I guess that means the tutorial's over. It's time to get going. And then I looked up where I was on like a guide, like table of contents. And I was 60% through the game. There is no other game. There's no like elaboration or opening up. And I don't think making the game longer is a solution there, but I just think the time is not spent interestingly. It feels like when people try to make an attempt for like this game is for people who either haven't played a JRPG before or haven't played one since the SNES, we need to make it for them. But that just means you dumb everything down, and also those people aren't going to play this game. If they were going to play one, they wouldn't pick this one.
Yeah.
Which is not Bravely Default's problem. Bravely Default's like, we're going to make a 3DS style Final Fantasy V game, and it's going to be for people who really like these kind of systems to like really fiddle with the battle systems. And that gives it like a sort of like, it's willing to just be kind of experimental and interesting because it knows the people who are playing it are like nerds who like RPGs. And I don't get the sense of that in this game. This is a game for people who don't play these style of games, but they're not going to pick up this one. It's boring. It doesn't look good. It doesn't have voice acting.
It's really funny because like, of the ones that like of the three games, Setsuna was the one that I'd always kind of like, maybe I should just get this. Maybe I should just get. And I was constantly on the fence of like, but everyone said it's boring and bad. And I'm like, yeah, but like maybe these old games are boring and bad too. Maybe I should get this one, just strictly because I'm like, what is like, you know, a JRPG set in a world that's just snow? Like that seemed that.
The answer is exhausting and boring.
Like, on its face, it seems interesting. Like, even like, okay, the moon is constantly destroying the world, trying to create a world without conflict. Like, that's not as far as, you know, JRPG anime bullshit hooks go, not bad.
Yeah.
But like the moment to moment writing, it really does. It felt like the programmer was writing it. Like when you're like, you know, testing out a quest design in RPG Maker and you just put bullshit in there. You're just like, hi. And everyone's like, hi, can you find my rat? Yes, I'll find your rat. Okay, great. And then like, you know, the next, you know, like scenario beat is, I found the rat for you. Thanks.
The thing that really struck me was the like kind of like fan localizers who really overcorrected after like the working designs era. It's like, no, everyone puts elaborations in these English translations and we're not going to do it. We're going to make this as strict to the Japanese as possible. And they make the like most boring texts on
Earth. I think that's what happened.
It's funny you mentioned that. No, well, it's funny you mentioned that. So I don't know what is true for your game, but I looked it up. I looked at the Wikipedia page and it mentions who localized this game.
Okay.
And Oninaki was localized by fucking Alexander O. Smith, which is not, he's good at this. So it has to be the game. Because, like, he did, you know, he's famously the guy that did Final Fantasy 10 and 12 and helped out with 8. But, like, famously, the 12 localization is incredible because that script is bad and boring. And they, like, added a load of flavor that the original game doesn't have. And obviously, like, I don't like the story of 12, but I can appreciate the effort put into the localization of that game to make it something special in the English form that wasn't present in the Japanese form, right? That is just true of what they did to that game. And, you know, I've looked at his work is generally very, very good. This is not. And I think he just translated the game. I don't think he was like, I think there wasn't much to work with. Like, for me, there was one bit where a guy died, like an old guy, and he's like waiting for the, demons to fight him, and he fights them and he dies, and then he just like turns up and he goes, "You're pretty good," and I'm like, hang on, this game hasn't had any kind of that playfulness this entire 15 hours leading up to this point. So seeing that explained where that was coming from, but it wasn't enough. There wasn't actually enough personality there.
Yeah, mine was localized by a company called Deco that just seems to do like, they're just a contractor. They did they did like Corpse Party. They do like a bunch of like small like Switch in like Japanese like indie games like shooters and stuff like that. So nothing that like stands out, but like, you know, they've done plenty of work. Doesn't seem like they did a ton of RPGs, but like I know people like Corpse Party. I haven't played it, but I really just think these games are just written extremely dryly, right? Like,
yes, it has to be. Because everyone just comes up and they basically say their thing in 2 lines. And then I'm like, I understand your perspective here, but there's no like art to it. And art's even the wrong word. Like when you say art to it, you expect like really elaborate like portrayal. But I don't even mean that. I mean, we played Live Alive, and that's almost unfair to compare because it's one of the best RPGs ever made. But the main plot of Live Alive is equally as generic as any of these games. It is not that deep. The things that are happening in that game are incredibly boring when viewed out from like a wide perspective. The thing it has is a deep understanding of like what makes genre storytelling interesting and different. It knows why a Western is different to a sci-fi thing beyond just technology and like setting stuff, even if it is all in the framework of a very generic story that like repeats throughout its chapters. It understands like how to, in a very short amount of time, give flavor and bring you into different generic worlds, and there's none of that here in Anunnaki. Or even though it is not doing the same thing, I enjoy sad stories about like cops working with ghosts. That's an easy genre, but it doesn't. Their personality doesn't come through.
The thing that's funny about this is Takeda is creative producer on your game. And in fact, there is a bit in the development section that, like, yeah, he's the one who came in and was like, you need to make this one darker, and like pushed it more into the like, we're murdering an entire town as the hero direction compared to the other two. That's
one of the best moments in the game is the night demon, the night demon, the night devil, whatever his name is coming to attack the main town. He's like taken over your best friend, or like not your best friend, like the leader of the Watchers. He's taken over his body, and he's now coming on the capital. He's going to attack, and you rush back to defend the capital, and you go back to the castle, and you talk to the sovereign, and they're like, you now need to go on another quest and get us some cannons, because we're going to defend with some cannons. And he's like, but you'll just fucking kill the people there. I don't want that. And it's like, there they are, well, we won't use them if you do your job, but we need to have a defense. And so you go, fine, I'm going to go get the cannons. And you go out, and then there's just a mob of people who are trying to do a revolution in the middle of all this in your way. And you're like, please just let me go past. I don't care about this, go away. But they won't. So you have to kill them to get past. And then later on, you like change to the demon world as you leave the ghost world as you leave the castle later, and like all the people you killed are just there. And it's like a good moment because it's, once they bring in writing to it, you talk to like one of the kids, and he's like, "Oh, I left my dog behind," and it suddenly becomes the most rote version of Feel the Tragedy. But as an actual plot point, it's good.
Yeah. I didn't have anything that like stood out in that way in like my plot. There's just that one scene where it turns out your gruff old guy actually watched his like, girlfriend die. It's like, oh, I love you, and we can't be. And she just drifts away like in his arms in like a cutscene. And because it's this game, it's just like him holding the model as everyone stands around in their models watching this in flashback. It's very undramatic in a way that would work, but they're clearly going for it. Like, this is the saddest thing that's ever happened. And I'm like, nothing in this game is that sad. I'll be honest.
It's weird because my game almost like tried to like avoid tragedy at every turn. Like there's one scene where one part where you get to the town and it's the town where everyone decides, oh, the Empire's bad, and we need to like realize that the Empire is actually bad. Okay. And you get to this town, and the river, it's like red, and it's like the town's not great, and everyone is like coughing and sick, and like you talked around, and people are like, well, the elder made a deal with the Empire to get a lot of money for us, in exchange for storing the Empire's like toxic waste in our cave. And it's like, you find out it's like, oh, the cave is actually where the water source is from, and the Empire is stuffing toxic waste in there. And that's also where like the local apothecary got like all of their medicinal herbs. And so you go there and you find out, oh, there's a giant toxic waste toad. You kill the toad. The water and like, and Kanata is like, I will take the memories of what this cave used to be and I will make it back. And so, boom, he brings the tree back. The tree purifies the water. The frog's gone. The town is all perfectly happy and healthy. And you run back with some like herbs and like the apothecary is like, I'm going to heal make the tonic to heal everyone. You heal the elder who is like dead, like basically dead. And he's just like, oh, I never should have fucked up. And everyone's like, no, it's all cool. Everyone's fine. No one's going to die. Also, you didn't actually do anything wrong. It was this poison toad that was polluting the water all along and the tree disappeared. It's not your fault. Like, you didn't learn anything. No one's going to learn anything from, like, your decision to, like, store toxic waste for the Empire in your cave that's your water source. And, like, it can't even have, like, no one in the town dies. There's no lesson to be learned from like maybe toxic waste is bad and we shouldn't bury it in caves near our water supply. Like, no, just nothing. Nothing matters.
Yeah, there's like tragedy in my game, right? But like, it is if someone just goes no and then they die, and because it's like a game about death, all of the things are someone dies and they go either, oh, you have fixed me, or someone goes, oh, I don't want to die, and they do. And I was thinking about Lost Odyssey a lot, because Lost Odyssey has a bunch of short stories and most of them are very pat as well, and they, there's not many directions you can go with, and then someone dies and the main character is immortal. But those stories are really moving. Those are sub stories with like writerly touches and little like arcs that really hook you in, and I just feel like the presentation of the short stories and side stories in these games had none of that. It's very disappointing.
We even had a character. Mine had a character named Locke, and he's the one who gets injured through his own buffoonery, and it has to be turned into a robot. Even when he gets turned into a robot, he comes back and like you finally kind of like, he fights you, and everyone's like, wait, he seems really familiar. And then like finally like you realize, and like no one really makes like, it's not like wow, my dude, you're all fucked up and a robot now. What's that like? Everyone's just kind of like, it's Locke. Locke's chill. We're chill with Locke again, which I guess is nice, but also the Empire turned your bro into a war machine. Maybe sit with this for a minute.
I mean, this is the JRPG thing, the frustration. Like, I like JRPGs a lot, but I get frustrated with some of the like recurring plot things, which is ideas are brought up and then subsumed into the greater question of should we kill everything or not, and then your party says no, we shouldn't, and then all the problems that were brought up are just ignored. Like, I guess we'll struggle on with the nature of humanity, and I'm like, we could deal with the problems like directly in a story. That is possible.
These games are bad.
Yeah, do we have anything else? Should we go into emails? Because this has been a negative segment.
It has been it's weird because like playing through this, there are times where I was like, this is fine in like the vaguely pleasant way to spend an hour just like going through a dungeon, fighting some monsters. There's a boss. The bosses in this game are not like puzzly in the way that like a Final Fantasy boss is, but they are like hard checks on, do you know how to like effectively deal damage and heal based on your like move sets. Like we have an email of someone who like hit a boss that was relatively hard. I found a place to power level like a couple dungeons before that area and had a good time doing that for a little bit. But like the act of playing an RPG I've always held as like inherently interesting and like fun and like worth doing. And I feel like the pull here, but you really do need some characters to care about to get through the rest of it, where there's like a plot and cutscenes. And
that's the thing is like, like, hello, I'm like, the one who plays all the wizardry games. Like, I fucking love me some grindy ass number crunching motherfucking RPG dungeon crawls. The reason I like the wizardry games is because I can name them after my friends, and now it's like, no, this isn't just some like nameless elf. This is M, and M is gonna like, fucking become a lord one day once they do all the lifting and read all the books, and now they're no longer, they can graduate from priesthood to being a lord. Like, that makes it fun. Like, having a connection to something that someone I care about makes it more interesting. But I just couldn't care about these characters, so like I was constantly like 4 or 5 levels behind, which means I hit some like bosses where I was just like, this sucks, I hate this, but like I'd beat the boss eventually, like I just power through it, and then it was like everyone went up 5 levels, and it was like, oh, you actually didn't really gate this well for anyone to not just spend all this time grinding. Games haven't done this since like Final Fantasy 1. Don't.
Yeah.
Oh god, man, that's an annoying video game.
Like, okay, Final Fantasy 1, like, yeah, you're gonna have to spend time
on the NES specifically.
You're gonna spend some time in the fucking forest fighting giants so that you can buy a full set of silver weapons for all of your crew. All right.
So that you can go down to the marsh caves.
But like, we haven't done that in a while.
Yeah. This game didn't have dungeons like that for me, but it had the problem where like the whole game is built around a grinding like sphere grids for each of these your weapon types, and you get like 11, I think it is. It might be more, it might be a couple less, I don't know. But you get a lot of these ways to grind up your levels and your sphere grid. Basically, they all have a sphere grid, and it takes so long to unlock anything, and you've got too many things for like min max, so you have to pick and choose, but you can't pick and choose in a way that's interesting because you only get points to level up the one you're using, so you have to use a shitty one to figure out if you like the other skills that you get later, which focuses you into laser focusing, and then all it really does is exist to set up a framework by which you can replay these boring levels over and over again, even though there's only 15 enemy types, and eventually maybe spend like 60 hours in a post game that wasn't interesting the first time.
My game also only has about 15 enemy types. Just they color swap them out.
I don't understand why you would put so much resources into like the things you and your party can do when the things they are like acting against are so rote and boring.
Yeah.
The thing that what I kept coming up against is like, I actually did like I liked the like kind of like handful of like tile sets that I ran into in my game. Like they were really pleasant to look at. Even like there's like one that's like spooky shipwreck zone, and like spooky shipwreck zone, I'm like, this looks dope. Like, and I just kept like thinking like, this is a very expensive RPG Maker game, but like but it ends up being like an RPG Maker tutorial is what it feels like, where they give you a game that teaches you how to like use RPG Maker. It's kind of a thing that they do, and I just kept like, when I'm like, what if Tokyo RPG Factory was just the team inside of Square Enix that made RPG Maker, that made the Square Enix version of RPG Maker, but it was this. And like, it was like, here's some sick asset packs. Here's like, an engine where you can script this shit and like, put it together in an RPG Maker fashion, instead of cranking out 3 mediocre RPG Maker games themselves.
Yeah. My thing with like the environments on mine is that the snow stuff is originally like very pretty. It's like, oh, you're going through like a field, here's a forest, here's a snowy village, and then you go through another one and it's like, here's a field, here's a forest, here's a snowy castle town, and then I'm desperate for something else, and you get to like a void. It's like just a bunch of like stone flat platforms over like a big swirling green void. You're like, this is new, this is different. I'm feeling this. And then you go to the next place, which is another big snowy field, and then you go to the next place, which is a bunch of platforms over a brown big void vortex thing. I'm like, you just reused the only other one you had. Why are we here?
It's hard to make assets.
Also, I'm very confused by why my game takes place in Spanish-speaking globe, because there's also Los Labyrinth.
Mm-hmm. That's interesting. That's weird. I know mine had a thing. It was on the Wikipedia description where like mine, they deliberately didn't use katakana for things that are typically in katakana, and would use like the kanji like to be more like, I don't know, like more like literary about it, but like none of that comes through in the translation, obviously. And also everything feels like, Fire Emblem medieval. So
yeah, mine was just very like aside from the dungeons, which ended up like, there's like kind of like maybe 3 dungeon tile sets, and they're all kind of like Aztec ruin, but like well preserved Aztec ruin, not like overgrown with vines Aztec ruin. And then everything else is just kind of generic medieval.
Mine was more just like Japanese, like not exactly, but definitely like Japanese and Asian inspired. Like, you know, because it's doing about reincarnation, and it definitely leaning into that more than doing the like Western JRPG fantasy stuff. Like, there's no knights here, right?
Except for the Imperial Capital. The Imperial Capital is like steampunk Victorian London, and like the whole thing takes place in a fog.
Great. Even my like castle was just like rundown castle, frozen castle ruins. Not very interesting. What if a castle was blue?
Yeah. And I eventually, my game like spends about 10 hours ending. It ends so many times. You have like 5 final dungeons, or what I thought were final dungeons when I started them.
Thank God I did not. I had one final dungeon, and then like the whole like coda of like going through the time loop and back through the save points was about 25 minutes.
Because I thought, because when I got to the end of the game where I was stabbing myself and taking in the Night Demon, I was like, okay, this has to be like the fake ending, and then I've got to go back to the palace and deal with whatever. Because I'd already seen the like secret shit under the palace that was like clearly the actual end of the game. And I was like, okay, so we'll deal with this, and I'll go back to the palace, and then that'll be the game. I was like, okay, there'll be one more dungeon. But then I stabbed myself, and instead a time loop began, and then I began a quest where I had to go back to every single area I'd been through and go through them again to like... Cool. To watch short scenes that were flashback scenes to fill in some shits. And that finished. Then I finally went to the palace. And I went to the palace and went to a null world. And in the null world, I found out some stuff, and then came back to the real world. Then went back to the palace and found a different whole thing. Oh no, I skipped one. I go to the palace. I kidnap the princess. We then go into the first pillar, which is like the crystal area, I guess. Then we go into a dungeon there, which it seems like the end of the game. Then I go into the null world, and then I go back to the palace, and the palace just becomes an abstract dungeon for no reason, even though I should just theoretically be able to walk up to the final boss. They put in some dungeony areas just because at the end.
Mine had a you get to like the end, like right before the final dungeon, it gives you like side quests for all the characters that are basically like go do a short story beat with them, and you get their like best magic, their best sprite night. And I did one of them, and I was like, I don't want to do any of these. I don't care about these characters enough to see their like loyalty mission, and then just skipped.
See, people did that.
Finish the game. Also, apparently, if you do them, they make the boss harder.
God, I hate when they do that shit in these games. Yeah, no, mine. You like, I think you have to do the loyalty missions, because mine was like goading me through loyalty missions.
Mine, you literally have to turn aside from the end of the game and go want to do them.
Mine wasn't loyalty missions, but it was when you upgrade your like spirits in the sphere grid. The way that future powers are gated off are through unlocking memories, and you unlock the memories, and then to go to the next bit of levels, you have to then go to a save point and watch a like backstory of all of your guys in a different like menu, and that could be like 5 minutes long. And each one of these has 4, and you have like 11 guys, and they're bad backstories. They're all very generic. So that sucked.
Can we do questions now? I don't want to talk about these games anymore.
Let's finish this whole segment.
if you would like to send us an email, they can be about anything. They don't have to be about the game we're covering. Please, sometimes I prefer it when they're not. I'll be honest. Just give us some video game questions. You can send them to abnormalmappingpodcast@gmail.com. We have so many goddamn questions.
We do.
And
we didn't have much, and then
I'm going to be honest, too many of them are about these 3 games, and none of us want to talk about them. So we'll just do our best. First one is from Anna, which is not about these games, thank God, because it came in a while ago. What do you think of the Saga series? Ever since the Frog for Whom the Bell Tolls episode, I've been curious to try more Game Boy games, and I saw the first Mana game and the first 3 Saga games are all in Game Boy, which had me curious to check them out. Any thoughts? I played the first Mana game. That game's sick. You should absolutely play it. It's incredible. Really loved it. That's if you're looking for like the ROM, it's under Final Fantasy Legend. That's a Legend, right? Yeah.
Legend is that, and then
yeah, it's really good. I was super impressed with it. Absolutely like one of the top tier Game Boy games. And then I tried to play the first Saga game, and those games are weird. And I'm not sure how much I'd get on with them, because that game is like a roll your own party. And the gimmick, at least of the first game, and I know it changes a little bit, is there's 3 types of people. There's humans, there's monsters, and there's, I don't remember what the third one is. They're basically like psychic characters, mutants. Yeah. And humans only level up through like bought equipment. Monsters level up through like enemy drops that you eat. They drop meat, and then you eat the meat, and you acquire your monster transforms into a new form, and it acquires like enemy skills basically. And the mutants, there's this like, how do you remember how they leveled up? It's like an entirely different way of they acquire skills. But it's just a lot. It's like, and it's kind of like a directionless thing where you're like in this world, you're like, you got to climb this tower to the top. And you just kind of set out to do that. But like, because the leveling's so weird, it's like hard to feel what progress looks like. I had a hard time with it. I know that gets a little more normal in the other game. The second one's the one people like, just play the second one. It's better, but I haven't gotten around to it yet. They're interesting.
Yeah. I love the Final Fantasy Legend, the first Mana game, and I appreciate the weirdness of the Saga games. I think the first Game Boy one is probably my favorite because it is the weirdest and most of an outlier. But I maybe need to revisit them. But God, who has the time?
We have an email from Alex, who played Lost Sphere. Thought it was fine. Dropped it to do anything else around 60% in, as the boss fights were starting to become very frustrating. There's too many mechanics, and it was not good at telling you things about the game. Like evasion. The game keeps track of how many times you evade. How do you do it? Game doesn't tell you. Why do most of Oberon's spells damage him?
No, I don't.
Do you know the answer to this?
Yeah, I do not know how you evade other than just like not being in the way of things, or like, I guess sometimes like I just straight up just dodge things. It was like a dodge roll. Now, but yeah, the bosses do get really fucking annoying, and they don't communicate like what their gimmick is. Like, Final Fantasy is actually like really good about communicating like what the kind of the deal with the boss is, like very quickly. Like in the first round or two, unless there's a state of like a phase change, like you kind of have the idea once you've gone through like a couple of rounds with like the first boss. In this one, you will go through like 30 rounds and you'll just be like, why does the boss keep pulling new shit out of its ass?
Great. Alex has a question. What is a shakeup you'd like to see in the form of traditional RPGs?
Writing. I'd like some. I'd like them to hire some writers, please.
Yeah, I think mine's just more focused on like character interaction stuff. And I don't mean like Fire Emblem. That's not what I'm asking for. Like, I'm not looking for support conversations. In fact, I'd like less options. I would just like a story about some characters interacting.
Yeah, I think that's the thing I want is like, because all of these games have very similar stories, and I know that I am complaining about that, I don't actually want more ambition. I think more ambition makes it worse, because I've seen a lot of JRPGs, and especially like the more really ambitious recent ones, and the people don't like, and all the stuff in Final Fantasy VII Remake and stuff, which I'm fine with it right now, but the ambitious stuff goes in like this epic direction that is just doubling down on all the frustrating things. It doesn't actually change the writing. I would like more character writing, please. I want smaller stories with characters that I like to hang out with.
Yeah, I think I'm with Jackson. Like, I mean, look, one of my favorite JRPGs still is the original Lunar Silver Star story. Like Lunar fucking rips for me. And it's because it's got bog standard anime story. The characters are all like, just cutouts. But like they've got enough of like, kind of character interaction, a charm. They move pieces around. Like the only ambitious thing about that game is they put in animated cutscenes. And like really
There's a whole vocal track in the middle of that game.
There's vocals. But like that's
the first time I'd ever seen that. I love Lunar because it had an anime cutscene where a girl sings on a boat.
And that's the most ambitious about it, but it's also still character moments. It's never like the big anime cutscenes aren't like, shit blowing up or anything like that. No, it's like, Luna singing on a boat or the big bad dude, his name is completely escaping me. Like Galleon.
Galleon.
Like just getting like rip shit mad about like, and it's just like, okay, cool. You've given me like the character beats. You or at least you use they use the ambition for the character development. Like do that.
Yeah, for sure. I had a lot of fondness for. I played Lunar on the PS1, which if I was going to go back, that's not the version I would play at this point. But man, that game was incredible back in the day. I'd never seen a game that was like funny and weird like that, even with all the working designs.
See, imagine doing that on the Sega CD. Like
exactly. No, mind blowing. Our next question is by Obspagon. Does anyone have any... the question is, what's the first game you ever pirated? But I was like, early memories of emulation. For me, it's Nesticle. That was what I got started on. I just remember the icon for Nesticle and being like, man, this is like dark internet.
Someone installed Project 64 on the school's T drive.
You're a baby.
Alongside Quake 3. In my heart of hearts, I still believe there are kids playing Quake 3 in schools.
I hope so.
I know that's probably not true, but I feel like... Because I was after Quake 3's time, but it was just really easy to install on the T drive. And so everyone was playing Quake in 2009 in Sudden.
We did the deathmatch demo for Daikatana.
Yeah!
But so much of my school life has been like revolved around like those last couple of years. It's just like Daikatana deathmatch demo. Hell yeah. Never bought the game. Maybe I should pirate it.
Well, no.
I want to play Daikatana. I think
you
that's
want
like
John
a thing
Romero
I would
to
like
make
to
you his
do.
bitch?
I'm really curious. Sure, whatever.
Yep.
Next question's from Eric, who played I Am Setsuna and finished it. And was like, it brought back not only the interesting parts of Golden RPGs, but all the annoying parts like limited save points, unskippable cutscenes, and a bunch of glitches. Eric had a mini boss right before the final boss gets stuck in an animation, which, that would have made me really mad. Had to rewatch all the cutscenes and stuff. I'm going to stop right here. I think limited save points are fine. In fact, in many ways, I miss them sometimes. Because it makes you it makes people designing the game to like force the game into reasonable chunks where it's like, oh, they're not going to be able to, like, we have to make it so like you can save right before this point where the game gets really hard because we don't want people to redo it. And the games that like, there are games that definitely don't do that stuff. But I remember in the 360 era, I was playing Star Ocean 4, specifically and that game had like, it would be like 90 minutes between save points. And I was like, what are we doing here? I don't want to play a game this long. Like you've ruined the capacity of save points by bloating your game up so badly. I like them as like a way to measure pace. I'm like, oh, I'm at the save point. Well, okay, I can stop for today because I don't want to get involved in the next branch of bullshit that's happening.
Yeah. I prefer... I think limited save points are fine, especially now in the world where like...
Everything autosaves?
I meant more like where you can suspend things.
Oh, yes.
Because then you still have the ability to walk away and pause it and do something else without finding the like, oh, mom, I'm not at a save point yet. Whatever.
Yes.
But I do think it's like, I think losing save points, you lose something in JRPG design, especially. Like, this is the problem with Final Fantasy 13, even though it had save points, but because you can restart from every battle, the battles they feel more endless because they are not given the context of, here is like, in a JRPG, you go between save points, or you go through a dungeon, and that is a unit of like thought, and your battle that you are having exists in context with other battles that you have already had and are about to have, and it means this like boring quick battle like has decision making that it wouldn't have if it was just you seeing how quickly I can kill the guys.
I feel like we like the limited save point thing, and it's funny because like I am of the time before the save points. You saved at the end. That's where you fucking saved.
Yes. Yeah, playing a bunch of Dragon Quest this past year, getting real used to like I gotta go back to town. I gotta save.
I feel like and maybe this is just me. Maybe it was just that like older games, the kind of dungeons are like an attrition thing. It is managing your resources to get to the end of it and still have something left in the tank for the boss. And I feel like we really kind of have gotten away from that, but like. I feel like, it used to be, and this is a complaint I have about everything, is that like status management and like status effects and buffs and debuffs and like all of that shit used to feel like it mattered a lot more. So like when you were like going from like town, and like you have to go through the forest to get to the dungeon, and then you had to like manage the dungeon, and like you're like, well shit, I'm fine on cures, but I'm fucking out of antidote. What if someone poisons my crew? And like having to make those decisions, like just going through it. But like, going from save point to save point, like a lot of times it feels like in the process of adding save points, they've also lessened the attrition factor in addition to that.
Yeah.
That is a big thing about whenever I go back and play old RPGs. I am always caught off guard by the fact that in modern games, I very rarely buy. I very rarely even buy cures, right? Like I've got some spells, but the idea that I'm having to manage multiple status effect items, consumables, even it's in games. It's not taken out of Final Fantasy, but I definitely consider it less. And then when I go back to main games, I'm like, I just like leveled up and did some heals. I forgot I needed to buy at least 30 antidotes before I go to this place.
Yeah, my rule of thumb has always been if I go into a town and I see status effect items, I always buy 5 just in case.
Just in case.
And if I start running into enemies that use them a lot, then I'll go and stock up. Most times you never need them, but it's always better to just have a couple lying around. You never know.
When I was playing Final Fantasy 1, you don't have the like gold overflow to be able to do just get 5 antidotes. That's some stuff. You got to pay to save in that game.
God. Eric did have a follow-up question. What's the worst bug or glitch you've had to deal with in a video game? Have you ever lost a ton of progress to a crash?
Yes, but I don't remember any like memorable stories.
Didn't you have a problem with this game? You had multiple problems with Oninaki, didn't you?
Yes, Oninaki started breaking one of the animations, broke on White Deer. Just locked in wouldn't fire, like the gun charged and then it fired, but it wouldn't break out of the charge phase. And it was fine for a while because I kept being like hit out of it by the enemies, and I was like, why isn't it firing? I guess I'll wait till there's no enemies around and I'll fire it off and see and make it, and I'll see what activates this skill. Then I did that. I was like, oh shit, I'm an idiot. Now I have nothing to break me out of this locked animation. This was totally a glitch. And I had to go back to the start of that fucking dungeon.
Mm-hmm.
But more generally speaking, in the past, I'm trying to think about like classic glitch stories, and it's happened to me, but I can't remember any like, and then I died right before the final boss of Dark Souls.
We had a game called Game you couldn't finish because of a glitch. When we played Atelier Verona, your game like corrupted and wouldn't let you continue at a certain point. It just crashed every time.
That was Destiny.
Oh, that was Destiny. Okay.
I just didn't finish the video game.
I had Quake 2 take out my computer.